Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're doing the ultimate zoom in. We're going to journey from the massive scale of the human body all the way down to the microscopic core of life itself. We interact with the world on this big, macro level every day, but the true engines of our existence are actually operating completely out of sight. So we're going to unlock the cell, stripping away the mystery to reveal the brilliant, intricate machinery that makes life possible.
37.2 trillion. Just let that number sink in for a second. That staggering figure represents the approximate number of cells working together in an average-sized adult human body right at this very moment. You aren't just a single entity. You are literally a walking, breathing metropolis made up of trillions of microscopic citizens, all collaborating constantly to keep the whole system running smoothly.
And hey, speaking of mind-blowing numbers, 100 billion. Out of your entire cellular makeup, 100 billion of those are specialized nerve cells hanging out just in your brain's cortex. That dense, incredibly complex network of cells is entirely responsible for your thoughts, your consciousness, and your ability to process the very concepts we're talking about right now. It is absolutely fascinating.
So, how do we make sense of all this? Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The building blocks of life. 2. Sizing up the cell. 3. Plant versus animal cells. 4. Inside the cell factory. And finally, 5. The mastermind, the nucleus.
All right, part 1, the building blocks of life, from single to trillions. Basically, every organism out there, whether you're a tiny amoeba, a towering tree, or a human being, starts out its origin story as just one single cell.
Moving right along to part 2, sizing up the cell, where form follows function. Now, as those initial cells multiply, they get highly specialized. And the size difference? It's wild. On one end of the spectrum, you've got cells so tiny, like certain bacteria or human red blood cells, that you absolutely need a high-powered microscope just to know they're there. But flip that completely. Think about the largest single cell in the living world today. It's actually an undeveloped ostrich egg. Yeah, that central yellow sphere starts out as just one massive single cell. It's a great reminder that single-celled definitely doesn't always mean invisible. And this brings us to a huge rule in biology. Form dictates function. Take your red blood cells, for instance. They aren't just random little blobs. They are specifically biconcave and disc-shaped. Think of them kind of like tiny donuts without the hole fully punched through. Why? Well, their main gig is delivering oxygen, which means they have to effortlessly squeeze through your body's tightest, most microscopic blood capillaries. If they were shaped like rigid cubes or spiky stars, our entire circulatory system would just jam up instantly.
Which leads us nicely into part 3, plant versus animal cells. This is really a tale of two architectures.
Knowing that cells are incredibly specialized, let's take a look at the two primary blueprints of multicellular life. The contrast is pretty obvious right out of the gate. The generalized animal architecture is super dense, packed almost entirely full of cytoplasm. But the plant cell, it's got this distinctly clear, rigid outer structure, plus this giant, seemingly empty space parked right in the middle. Let's break those key differences down a bit more. The absolute most crucial point here is that plant cells wear a sort of biological armor, a distinct outermost layer called a cell wall. It's actually non-living, made of cellulose, and it gives plants the rigid shape they need to literally stand tall, since, they don't have skeletons like we do. Plant cells also rock these massive vacuoles to hold water and maintain internal water pressure, or turgidity. Animal cells, on the other hand, we completely lack that rigid cell wall, which allows us to be flexible. And our vacuoles, if we even have them at all, are usually tiny and temporary.
Part 4, inside the cell factory, meeting the organelles.
Imagine we just peeled back that outer semi-permeable cell membrane and dove straight into the cytoplasm. It is literally like a bustling factory floor in here. Scattered everywhere are the essential organelles, mitochondria, the endoplasmic reticulum, the Golgi body, ribosomes, lysosomes, and the centrosome. Every single one of these structures has a highly specific, vital job. The ER acts as your structural scaffolding. The Golgi apparatus handles packaging and secretion. You get the idea. Let's zoom in on a few of the real VIPs.
First up, the mitochondria. You've probably heard it called the powerhouse of the cell. And honestly, that title is perfectly earned. These are double-walled, kind of sausage-shaped structures where cellular respiration takes place. Their entire purpose is to take raw nutrients and release energy, storing it up as ATP. Without these guys efficiently churning out power, the rest of the cellular factory simply grinds to a halt.
Next up, we have the ribosomes. Picture these as tiny, dense little granules that act as the actual physical manufacturing machines of the cell. Their one and only job is protein synthesis. You'll spot them either floating freely out in the cytoplasm or literally studding the outside of the rough endoplasmic reticulum. But wherever they are, they're working constantly, piecing together the vital proteins your body uses to build and repair itself.
Okay, this next one gets a little dramatic, the lysosomes. These are membranous sacs packed with up to 40 different, highly potent enzymes. They act as the internal digestion system, rapidly breaking down any weird foreign substances that wander in. But, and here's the crazy part, if the cell gets old or severely injured, these lysosomes will literally burst open. They rapidly destroy the entire cell's own organelles to protect the wider tissue system. Because of this extreme self-destruct protocol, they've actually earned the nickname suicide bags. Pretty intense, right?
And that brings us to our final stop, part 5, the mastermind, the nucleus.
We've officially hit the deepest level of our macro to micro journey. We've toured the factory floor, and now we are stepping straight into the executive suite. Let's look at the architecture of this mastermind. It is usually the largest organelle in there, heavily guarded by a double-layered nuclear membrane. It has these tiny nuclear pores that act like security gates, carefully controlling what's allowed in and out. Inside, floating in the nucleoplasm, you have the nucleolus churning out ribosomes, and most importantly, the chromatin network. These are the fine thread-like structures that eventually condense into chromosomes. They carry the actual DNA that dictates literally everything about the organism.
To really grasp why we call this thing the mastermind, let's turn a standard textbook fact into a bit of a medical drama. Scientists actually proved how vital the nucleus is with this incredibly cool transplant experiment on amoebas. So, step 1. An amoeba naturally grows and divides. Step 2. A scientist uses microsurgery to carefully remove the nucleus. The result? The amoeba rapidly dies. But step 3 is where it gets amazing. If they quickly transplant a nucleus from another amoeba into an enucleated or nucleus-free amoeba, the recipient survives and totally bounces back.
The outcome of this experiment is just undeniable proof. The enucleated donor amoeba completely perishes without its command center. Yet, the recipient that was dying immediately returns to normal life the second it gets that transplanted nucleus installed. It brilliantly illustrates that while every single organelle pulls its weight, the nucleus is unquestionably the master of the cell. If you remove the blueprint, the entire factory collapses.
As we wrap up this incredible zoom in on the architecture of life, I want to leave you with something to chew on. Based on everything we've covered today, if biological form perfectly follows function, what would actually happen to an animal cell, like one of your super flexible red blood cells or an amoeboid white blood cell, if it suddenly developed a rigid, non-living cell wall like a plant? Seriously, think about that delicate balance of cellular design and what a massive structural change like that would mean for the entire human body. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the invisible world around you.